Hey guys, I'm Phil Harris.
And I'm Ashley Harris.
We are Shred MX Conditioning, and we provide online fitness and nutrition coaching, as well as in-person riding clinics for riders and racers from local to pro.
Now, we're racers ourselves, so we'll be talking about all things moto on this channel, from motocross, fitness and nutrition, injury, prevention and maintenance, local races, amateur nationals, pro events, current happenings in the sport, and everything in between. So whether you're on the road or in the garage, turn it up and enjoy.
This is Shred MX Shop Talk. Hey guys, welcome back. We got episode 17 coming at you here. We got a little special guest today. We're very excited to bring on Danial Blair and to talk about the Essex University that he's doing.
Yeah. So again, thanks for your time today, Daniel. Super excited to have you on. I learned about your Supercross University recently, and it really piqued my interest because of the help that you're providing to racers coming through the system, we'll call it. So tell us a little bit about first your background in racing. How did you get involved in the industry?
Awesome. My background actually will lead to the formation and creation of Supercross University because they do tie in for a lot of different reasons. But background would be I was dirt bike racer, amateur kid growing up. I started at 5 years old. This is in the late 80s, so a little bit different time than it is now. Not as maybe competitive as it is now. Not as many families and not as much investment, but rode the 50s, rode the 60s, rode the 80s before they decided to bump up the power. I think you come from that generation too, I believe.
Yeah. I 60s and the 80s, and then I think I did get an 85 shortly before I got off of them. So
I personally went 60, 65, 80, 85, 85L. I rode them all.
Got it. Got it. Well, and I don't remember the transition there, but I just remember that for me, it ended in a no. It wasn't the fives when I was racing, but I went through all that like most kids do, raced all the big amateur races. The World Minis in Las Vegas that was the bigger one back then. Loretta Lynn's was coming up. Lake Whitney in Texas existed. That was a great one. Ponca. I did all those races, but had some success. I won the World Minis as an amateur and on a 50 and then again on the 80s. And then for me, at the end of amateur racing into the pro ranks, back then there was a real weird transition from one to the other. And there really wasn't a transition. You kind of just ended amateur and then turned pro on big bikes. And that chapter of my life, I look back on now as, yeah, that was where most of the mistakes came from. That's where some of the decisions were a little bit off, but it's okay. I got into the pros. I did okay. I made some main events, made 450 main events, a lot of 250 mains, got top 10 in points one year in Supercross. Actually set an AMA record for the first rider to make both mains on the same night on four strokes back when they allowed both mains in the same night and when four strokes were new. So I've learned to be more proud of what I did in my pro career that went on for a pretty long time, eventually led me to arena cross. But from there, I got into broadcasting. I lucked out and got a job in TV and was able to make my way up and become a Supercross broadcaster. And then went to KTM as the Orange Brigade team manager. Got an interesting call one day and asked if I could come out to the Orange Brigade camp and kind of do a little bit of speaking to the kids on how to do interviews and all that stuff. And then I left there a couple of weeks later with the job as a team manager for Orange Brigade. And that next chapter really is what created this creation of Supercross U. I got to manage 40 families over the course of 2 years. And I saw a lot of the things in them that I lived through myself, which was maybe desperate decision making, maybe a lot of years of investment, not knowing what to do and flipping the switch on a little early. And now some families did it great and navigated those waters very well. But I just saw a lot in what I went through in my younger years and was pretty inspired to do something about it because I feel like that period of life is very tough when it comes to making decisions. And if you make the wrong one, then your investment could be thrown out the window very fast. And with KTM, I had 40 families for 2 years I got to work with, but I was also competing against the other 100,000 families in the pits. And it was hard for me to actually compete against them and try to win, but then also see them doing the wrong thing and not being able to influence and help them in some of their decision making. So kind of made a crazy call and decided, you know what, I want to do something more for everybody, not just for one group. And that came the formation of Supercross University, which is an education-based program on helping amateur families get through amateur racing, which is a kind of a wild tornado for everybody. And I feel like I have the ability through my experiences and my own personal ones and the ones I've experienced recently to make a difference for families that want to be Supercross racers and help them get through what I consider to be a very crazy chapter of life, which is amateur racing.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, we've both been raised in the amateur ranks. Phil kind of himself dabbled into the rough transition into going pro, and never quite made it there because of some of the decisions that were made by his own parents. So
Yeah, bad decisions, bad kind of pass. And I did a little bit of arena cross actually, kind of about the time you and your brother were doing them. It was like '06, '07,
Yep.
'08, somewhere
Yep.
in that era. I did a little bit of that stuff, and same thing. Like I did pretty well, but just kind of came up shy every time I having like a pro card or this or that, and yeah, trying to ride for different people and having things go south or whatever it may be. Yeah, I can understand, and I was kind of part of that whole trying to transition from amateur to pro, having no idea what we were doing, anything like that. Didn't really ever do the SX side of it, but more the moto side of it, but still kind of the same thing. There's no clear path like to understanding kind of what to avoid, what to do, different things like that. So that's the other thing I feel like we're trying to do too is help guide riders in a little better direction, whether, whatever their goals may be. So
So again, everything that you're doing hits very close to home for us. So that's definitely what like piqued my interest in it. There's a big need that you're filling in the sport here. I did want to ask because it's obviously Supercross University. Does it apply, and this is for everyone else, does it apply for like if you want to race from an amateur and go pro outdoors as well? Is it a similar? Is it the same program?
Yes. Yes. So it's called Supercross University because I think for most kids, especially now, their dream is to be in the stadium. And I think for a lot of kids, you still see the motocross is still a very big part of this. Of course, with amateur racing, it's most of it, but everyone wants to be in those stadiums someday. And my thought is, if you're going to start on a 50 with a goal of being in a stadium, then you need to go through an education program that will lead you to Supercross. And a lot of the decisions you make when you're young will actually help you get there and can help you in so many ways. For one, being when you invest and how to invest in a racer's career. I see a lot of families right now that they treat the 50 class like it's everything, and you got to win the 50 class. And I like to share the message that you have a long way to go before you get into those stadiums. So yes, you got to invest, but you got to invest in different ways that allow you to save the emotion, save the finances, because every year should be a little bit of an elevation period. So yeah, the program is designed around the dream of being in Supercross, and the education needed to be there. But everything I'm doing with every student of mine is all amateur motocross based. And yes, I do influence a lot of Supercross. I like to get kids on the Supercross track early. You mentioned arena cross. I'm a big believer in getting on that as soon as possible so you can learn what it feels like to race in tight confines and learn what those days are like. Also racing at night, because motocross is mostly in the day and Supercross is at night. So you need to get that experience. So the ultimate dream is to be in the stadiums in Supercross, but you got to go through motocross to get there. So I would say 90% of what I'm doing is motocross based, with a design around having them ready for the chance that they can get on the gate for a futures race and eventually turn pro and race 250 East or 250 West.
And I think that's smart. I think, I mean, even the writers now, you kind of seen it, and I think this is why they introduced the playoffs.
yeah,
Yeah, the
uh,
SMX playoff rounds is
yeah,
because
that's a max.
everyone was so interested in just doing Supercross because that's where contracts are signed. I feel like that's where the money is made. You're in front of everyone in a stadium. So yes, motocross is the outdoors are gnarly and part of the sport as well. But I think, like you said, a lot of people, racers, the goal is Supercross. So definitely great name. Just wanted to clarify that for anyone
Yep. That's,
interested.
it's a good question, because I had a lot of people early say, this must not be for me because we're not in Supercross. And it's like, do you want to be there? Well, yes, I want to be there. I said, perfect. That's what it's for. It's Supercross education to lead you to Supercross. And that's all done through motocross in the younger years. So I'm glad you asked, because that is a very, very important thing that people were a little bit off on in the very beginning.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the other thing, talking about like managing, like investing in the sport and everything at such a young age as 50s, we actually get that quite a bit too. We have a lot of 50 parents that'll ask, oh, well, Jimmy is all in on moto. What kind of workout program should I have him on at 6 years old? And I'm like, he's 6. Like, if he doesn't do any other sports, sure, we can give him something basic to do that's going to keep him strong. But the reality is managing parents' expectations and kind of helping move their thought process in the right direction is much more important at a young age. So you prevent burnout in the child and things like that. So again, going back to helping these families kind of manage the transition is super important. Or you end up with like you said, tearing families apart or burnout of the kid. All of these things that just lead to a career that's lackluster or not a career in the industry because the kid's moved on already.
I love that. So I agree with you. I think there's a natural feeling that the clock is ticking and you got to hit everything as hard as possible, as soon as possible. And I'm with you. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, they're kids. They got a lot of energy. I have people ask me all the time, what should we do for workouts? What should we do for food and diet? And I say, just be as absolutely active and healthy as possible, but you don't actually need to be as detailed because they're kids. You need to have fun. They need to enjoy it. You need to instill like some discipline too. You don't want to be eating candy and drinking sodas right before the race, but
Right.
you don't have to be like, you don't have to be a pro athlete yet because you're not a pro. In fact, one of my biggest lessons in Supercross U is that I believe that the actual word career starts in the teenage years because I believe it happens more through and at the end of puberty. Because for every kid, when they go through puberty, they make a lot of changes to their physical, to their mental, to their emotional. And if you invest too much money and too much pressure and too much discipline in the younger years, then right when they go through it, they're going to be a little bit on the burnout side. And then they're not going to want to be as disciplined and be as motivated on the other side because they already did that. So I like what you're saying too. You have to be somewhat in moderation about your efforts and how you go about it, especially when it comes to that stuff. But at the same time, it's good to instill like some barriers and some discipline. And hey, let's go to bed on time. Hey, let's eat the right things the night before. That's all. I think that's all amazing. But I would say you don't need to be all the way in until you go through puberty because that's when it gets way tough physically, mentally, emotionally, and you're through that period where you're becoming who you're going to be more as an adult. So it's tough though because families they want to get into it. They see other kids doing it. They want to be fast early and they want it now. But when you see these Justin Cooper stories and these Levi Kitchen stories, you see these kids that break out at 15, 16, 17, even 18 years old. It kind of makes you go, huh? Let me look at this from a little bit different angle. Do we need to be this invested early? And my answer would be you do need to be invested in the right things. And for me, it's about being adaptable, going to as many tracks as you can, as many experiences as you can, learning how to ride multiple bikes. Like you can make a list of 10 things that matter so much more than the things that everyone thinks matters in the early days, like results. Like results mean nothing in the beginning because honestly, they're mini bikes. They're not even big bikes yet. So I love that you said that. I'm on the same page with you. You got to go all in, but you can go all in all the right ways and avoid the things that are going to burn you out, tear your family apart, and just bankrupt you. So no, I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, agree. We have a mini moto program, but it's very basic. So like when a parent's just like, yeah, they don't do any other sports, they don't want to. Hopefully it's actually the kids saying they don't want to, but I'm like, okay, we introduce them to very basic movements just so they can start learning how their body works. And I have, a graphic that I provide to the parent and the kid, like to teach them good foods versus bad foods, kind of how to eat on a race day. Because the reality I've found that especially young kids, it's usually more of an issue with the parent that they don't know what they're doing and they want to learn, but they say that Jimmy wants to learn, because well he's interested in his racing career. Like, well, I'm sure he loves riding, but at this point in time, you would like to learn how to help him excel. So let me teach you first, and we'll have him learning basic, like I said, body, just functional movements and stretching and things like that. So yeah, just managing parents expectations, anything under, just like you said, puberty age. So once we hit puberty age, and for me, like a kid, boy, girl, is like they're the one talking to me, telling me like, yes, I want this. And if they're underage, I make parent and kid come on our calls to talk to me about it. Like, I want to hear it from both of you. I'm not here to waste anyone's money, but puberty age is like really the age, like, okay, like, yeah, let's take it a little more seriously. You're ready for this. Your maturity level is there. And
They're
I'm
like understanding that they want that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
not just they think, oh, everyone's cheering for me when I ride my bike, so I want more of this. So, definitely great. Now, with yours, I know you said that you're helping everyone. So, at what age really for you is it like the 14, 15 year is like ideal for you?
Well, for our program, I mean, I'm a chameleon, so I change based on who I'm with. And I have multiple 8-year-olds right now that I don't treat the same because their families are different. I have multiple 16-year-olds that are different. So I really adjust how I I wouldn't say I coach because I don't really coach. I more guide and educate. So for instance, if I have a 16-year-old kid who right now is in the A class racing futures, my conversations are very specific to him, and I have those, and those are very different. That's a lot harsher of a program and discussions because these are kids that are on the doorstep of making it, and they need really advanced education. Where if you have a 16-year-old kid who's just getting on the big bikes and hasn't made Loretta's yet, well, then I mean, I'm not focusing on the same things. There's certain things that he doesn't know yet that he needs. So it's very rangy, but it does start on the 50, and I do believe that that's where you can have some of the biggest impact because they're brand new. They're not set in their ways yet. They're not going to burn out a couple of years of doing the wrong thing. So in all reality, the younger the better for me because I can steer the ship a little bit better. And when I talk to 50 families, I have a couple of them right now in our program. It's all about skill building. It's all about growing their talents and growing their abilities and growing their experience. Again, I'll tell a kid in a family, "Oh, you're 8 years old and they got 3 Cobra 50s." And I'm like, "You don't need three Cobra 50s. What you need is you need a Cobra 50, you need a KTM 50, and you might even need a KX65, which isn't the most competitive bike, but still have that in the backyard so you can play around on that. That way he's understanding different motorcycles, different feelings." And I do that all the way through. I mean, all the way through mini bikes. I think you should be on multiple different size bikes, different models. If you have a one track that you go to and you win all the time, then I think you should take a break from there and you need to go to the 5 places you've never been before. One's sand, one's clay, one's hills, one's flat. I am all about throwing as much experience and diversity and adaptability into a kid in their younger years, because once you get into the older years, you don't have as much time to do that. You really have to get everything perfect to be able to compete at the highest level. So I to be honest with you, there's more of a reward for me on race day when it comes to the higher end riders that are there at that 15, 16 that are getting ready to go to futures because we're right on the doorstep. But I actually feel a lot more fulfillment with the riders that I work with in their younger years because I know that I can throw a lot at them that's really going to matter in the end. And I can help a family save money. And when I say save money, I don't mean not spend it, because I want to be clear. I'm not sitting here as a pitch man. Well, if you let me educate you, I'm going to save you money. No, they're going to spend the same money. I just want you to not spend it all on these things. Let's go and spend it all on these things right now, because this is going to matter in the end. And it's also keep you from burnout. So that's where my education kind of passion goes to, is the early days, making sure that every dollar is spent is going to things that's going to help in the end, and play more of the macro game, not as much of the micro game, and let that stuff happen after puberty when we don't really have a choice to be as macro. We really have to cross the T's, dot the I's, and win. And so for me, my days are wild. They're so rangy. I mean, I'll have a 250A kid and a 65 kid who's never made Loretta's back-to-back meetings. And I love those days, but the younger, the better, because I can definitely get things going in the right direction and save people before they go 2-3 years in and then realize like, I spent too much and I'm over it, when I don't want them to do that. I want them to ride it out for a longer period of time and apply what's needed, when's needed. And it's been great. It's challenging, but it's been very fulfilling.
Yeah, well, glad to hear it. I know that there's a lot of people that listen to our podcast that are known to us, obviously local. We're from Ohio. A lot of people over the East Coast, though, that are families that are racing. So I think you saying like starting young is going to be super good for them to hear. So that actually does lead me into the next question I wanted to ask you. And you kind of like said it a little bit. It's a lot about meetings and education, but what does the program encompass? Like if we wanted, let's say like we wanted to work with you, what comes with it? What happens?
So I have 3 different options, and then we have our curriculum. So curriculum is kind of separate, and what it is, it's a video series. I think we're up to 30 something videos now, with probably 15 to 20 more on the horizon, which are just basic education. Like I have a lesson on adaptability and why it's important to be adaptable and how to push the adaptable gene, because I think it's something that can grow. Some kids are really just have it. They can write anything. They got that. But for me, I wasn't that way. I was very specific to what I was on. And when I was on hardpack, I was good. When I was on sand, I struggled because I didn't do it enough. I didn't like ruts because I didn't do them. And then I didn't like mud because, well, when my dad, when I was young, didn't want me on the mud because it would ruin our bike. So I'm a big believer that you need to be as adaptable as possible. So I have lessons like that. I have one lesson's called, I think I forget how we reworded the title, but it's peaks and valleys. So when you're on a peak and everything's going right, how to go about that. Because a lot of kids, when they're doing really well, they get overconfident. And that's when injuries happen, from being too confident in their peak that they're on. So I like to teach people how to manage that. Or when you're in a valley, man, we're on a slump for a month. We don't know what to do. Well, I have a list of tricks that will help you get out of a valley. One would be maybe going to an easier race on an easier track, getting your confidence back, and then going back. Like, it's just like a range of lessons in the curriculum that's for everybody, and it's way more, it's broad and I wouldn't say basic, but very broad and accessible for everybody. The other part of the program, the career management part, is that's definitely where I'd say most of the energy for me is gone, because it requires the most energy. But we have three options, which are, they're all done by Zoom. They're Zoom's like kind of like what we're doing now. And what I do is I meet with each family, and the first option is called Whole Shot, and we do a one-time consultation, and I have you fill out a form ahead of time where you tell me all these different things about you and some of the problems that you're facing. That way we can use every minute of the Zoom to go over all these different things and steer people in the right direction. Then, of course, I send them the Zoom so they can watch it back, because I don't want people to be taking notes while I'm talking, because then they're not listening all the way. I want them to listen and take it in. And then when they get the file, be able to go back through it again and then watch it 2 times, maybe 3 times, just to revisit. So that's our starter kind of one-time consultation. Then we have a champion program and a main event program, which is more consultation. So you either get 2 or 4. And when we do it that way, I like to spread them out based on what the importance is. So for some families right now, want to make Loretta Lynn's this year, got to make it to Loretta Lynn's this year. We want to do the main event program, which is a 2 consultation program. We do the first one to get all the basics out of the way, and then I send them off with some information, some things to do, and then we pick a date to revisit, and it's usually based on the schedule and something that's important to them. So that's how it's done. They're all done by Zoom. They're all sent afterwards, and they're all specific to that rider's needs, which I need to know ahead of time, so we don't spend, the first 10 minutes of Zoom just small talking and, hey, I like to go, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. Let's get into this thing. And that way I can give them as many answers as possible to their problems. And for the most part, these have been great. I mean, they're strategy sessions all of them have turned into that. We cover kind of the basics right away, and then we get into strategy. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. Oh, your regional's here. Okay, well, great. You're already through the qualifier. Why don't you go to this qualifier in this region, because that track is a lot like your regional track, and you need to get better in sand. Like, it's pure strategy, it's calendar planning, and it's specific needs based Zooms one-on-one. And we have 3 different options for families that want to be more committed, or maybe some families just want one. They want to know, hey, where are we right now? We want to know, and then we can maybe revisit this in 6 months or a year. So we kind of opened it up that way to be optional.
And I think options are great for people. I'm sure they're all at different price points too. So to give people an opportunity to speak with you and have the chance to learn something, people that are more invested obviously can be. Otherwise, I have to say, I am such a lover of and hater of technology when it comes to Zoom and things. That's exactly how we run our business, is Zoom meetings and conversations with people. So it's really nice to be able to even have a meeting with you like this. So glad to hear that. Really great options. I love the structure of your program. I love the curriculum. And sending the video back to people, like you said, so they're not taking notes. They have it to kind of go off of and refer back to. Because like you said, if someone's taking notes, they're not going to be listening fully, which happens.
Yep.
So otherwise,
we learned that right away. The very first lesson we did, that's what happened. We went over it all, and then they emailed me back and said, hey, you were saying this again. What were you talking about? And I was like, oh, I mean, you need, oh my gosh, you need the file. And I didn't record that one. And so it was just like, so we realized right away, like, no. These have to be recorded, sent back. That way you can just listen and be engaged in the moment, really inspire some questions. That way our dialogue's good. And then you can go back and revisit it. And for some families, I've had already revisit it like a month later and come back and say, hey, we went back and watched the first video and didn't even realize that we weren't doing that part. So to me, we learned right away through a very quick trial and error that it had to be that way, and it's been massive.
I can imagine. And I can say, for myself, like I said, I kind of went through some of those pitfalls like you talked about coming out of the AM. So I think it's awesome seeing what you're doing and that you're putting that out there and making that available to people, just because like you can understand, and I understand, like from our eras, there wasn't any of that there. And it was it was just kind of like you were winging it most of the time. And I do believe like Supercross is a big thing. Like we were talking earlier, it's so much like glitz and glam nowadays and stuff. It is the main like focus for everyone, and that is a big push. So I think it's awesome, what you're doing and giving the information to everyone.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
wanted to
let me
speak.
add to that real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because one thing I want to say about Supercross too is every kid, and I think we're blessed in the sport that we have this option, but every kid wants to be the next Eli Tomac. That's their dream. And dreams are big, and everyone needs to dream big. You got to dream bigger than you ever imagined. But the one thing that's cool about our sport is that you don't have to be like Tomac to end up getting into those stadiums someday. If things work out, and again, it's a challenge, you're still going to have to go and execute. But in this sport, it's not just about being a champion. And I want to make sure everyone knows that I'm not trying to make everyone a champion here. I'm trying to get everyone to be as good as they can be, as safe as they can be, invest all the right ways to where if their destination someday is to get on that gate and be able to fulfill that dream, that's a bit available too. And there's not a lot of other sports that have that. It's very high end in other sports where you got to make it really, really make it, or you don't really get to make it. Where in this sport, just getting onto one of those gates someday could be maybe what the dream is. And for that athlete, that's the goal we're chasing too. And I have some kids right now that have told me that straight up. They've said their own personal expectations are that they want to be there someday, and it's not to be the next Eli Tomac like maybe their dad thinks. So I want people to know that too, that this isn't about becoming a champion. I'm not trying to make champions. I'm trying to fulfill all the gaps needed in education for every kid to fulfill their dream. And for a lot of the kids I have right now, they're not even thinking Supercross. They just want to make Loretta's for the first time. And I'm like, perfect. That's where we're at now. Let's focus on getting to Loretta's. And so I just want to make sure people aren't thinking that this is a get you to the championship level. This is to get you to whatever your dreams are or whatever your next goal is. And again, like we talked about, it goes through amateur racing. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Um,
I think our Ohio riders kind of speak to that well.
yeah.
So, I mean, again, just being from Ohio, we always pay attention to the Supercross riders that are from Ohio. You have AP, who is killing it, and
yep.
then a couple more Ohio riders, Jeremy Hand, you got Logan Carnow and Cade Clayson, all of which are at different levels, but they're all, I would call them successful Supercross racers. They're all doing what they want to do. So I think that's a great way to look at it. I wanted to say to touch on your point, because you mentioned in your era, you didn't have anyone to help transition you guys into the professional side of it. I feel like it's the same on the fitness and nutrition aspect. I mean, back
Yeah.
when you guys were younger, you didn't even really like Google things, right? Like there was no Google. Like
There's
what do
like no information
what
out there.
for a motocross workout? Like you just kind of heard people talking about stuff. Mainly, I feel like it was go running, which is
Yeah.
cool. You need cardio, but in this modern era of technology, like there's so much information out there. There's also a lot of bad information. So having someone like yourself, having someone like Phil or myself, professionals in the industry that can guide people in the right direction, I feel like is it's
Very beneficial.
priceless.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's worth it if that's what you're looking to do.
I agree. And that's another part of my program too, is that I'm not the one-stop shop for all information. And I'll be straight up transparent. When it came to fitness and being healthy off the bike, it was an area where I was weak. I was very weak in that department. I mean, so much so that even today I have a son, he's 14 years old. He does not take his nutritional advice or his off the bike workout advice from me. He works with someone else because his mom told him that I'm not good at that stuff. And he says he wants to make it someday and he needs the best. So actually we worked a deal and he doesn't get coached by that stuff for me because I don't know that stuff as well. So even in my program right now, I lead people to others that I think can help them because I'm very good at managing and guiding, but I also don't want to be known as this specific guy. So even with coaching, I have some tips on some rad ways to do some coaching and some drills, but I want you to find the coach that's right for you. I want you to work with different people. I want you to work with people who understand nutrition and try different people out and see what works for you because everyone is individual. Everybody is different. And the best way to find what's best for you is to try. So I want everyone to know that for sure too, that this is not like, if I go to Daniel, he's going to have everything for me. No, I'm going to probably lead you places to different people that can be more specific for you. And that's what makes, I think, my guidance so valuable. Even going back into my run with KTM and Orange Brigade, I was the team manager who managed Cole Davies. I didn't coach Cole Davies. I didn't manage his nutrition. I didn't manage his testing, but I had him with the right people based on the relationships that he had, that they helped make him successful. My job was more to be like Siri. I was just the map that helped kind of guide the car where it was going. And, I get a lot of credit for him. And to be honest with you, the only credit I really deserve is putting him with the right people that did the hard stuff for him. So I want to make that clear too, that I am more of a guide than the specific detailed final piece to your puzzle. I'm better at actually getting you to the final piece of your puzzle than being that. And I want to make sure that's clear too. So the expectations aren't there that I'm going to help you with every little detail of your program. I'm really good at getting you to the right people. And that's, I think, one of my biggest strengths is just using my network and using my experience to say, hey, I know your personality. You're probably going to struggle with coaches that are like this, but you're going to do very well with coaches that are like this. Why don't you look into them? That's more where my strength is than saying, hey, do what I do, X's and O's, because honestly, I only know what I know. And my best trait is actually making sure people connect together and relationships work. So that's just want to make sure that that was clear.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I like that, you're not a one path works for everyone, because there is too many people in our sport that are that way. And I also wanted to, jump back and say that, you saying that you're not out there to make everyone a champion, or, put that expectation on everyone. Like I can appreciate that as a racer because I grew up with a dad that thought that I needed to be the fastest guy in the world. So he put all that pressure on me. And I think too many parents do that, like the whole Tomac thing. Like there are a lot of kids out there that obviously they strive for that. That's what they know they want to do. But I think at the same turn of it, there's a lot of parents that are like, my kid has to be Eli Tomac or they suck, and
Or it's a
that,
fail.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's like as soon as they're not hitting those strides early on, it's like, well, we're never getting anywhere. So it's nice to hear you say, like even if the kid is just looking for some guidance, make Loretta's this year or next year or whatever it may be, it's not you're not just focused on like making a kid like the next the next top level rider. So that's awesome.
And you never know where they can be. Like you said, if the expectation's too high too early, then they give up when really it's like, I don't know about you, but I would take Justin Cooper's career. I mean, he's a 250
Oh yeah.
Supercross champion, factory 450 podium rider who won the motocross. Did he win? Yeah, he won the motocross of nations. In fact, he was the most clutch rider we had on our motocross of nations team that broke the streak. He won his class. He didn't turn pro until he was like 19 years old because he didn't blossom until he was 16 or 17. And if the expectation on him at 12 was to be the next Eli Tomac, they would have quit. So in reality, I think that's a big thing too, is that families need to realize that it is the long game and different people develop at different times. And if you're not winning everything at the age of 12, 13 or 9, whatever, that's totally fine. There's successful kids that come out of this thing by blossoming later. In fact, they usually have longer careers. Justin Brayton had an amazing career. I would take his career any day of the week. He won the Daytona Supercross. He rode for factory teams forever. He ended up going international forever. The guy is such a success story. I mean, his parents literally at the age of like 18 years old told him, we'll give you 1 year all in. And he went for it. I mean, he didn't win anything before that. So it's very important that even the ones that dream big, that maybe have the thought that they could get there, you can't put that pressure on them too early because they develop at different times. Some kids are 12 years old and they're like little men. And it's like, you can't judge your kid against that kid. Your kid might not be a man until he's 18 years old, but he might have a 10 times better career. So yeah, we're on the same page. And here's the thing. We're on the same page, but so are a lot of other people in the sport right now. And I think the most important thing is that a lot of education is getting out there. And if enough people together are all in unison on this, we can really change amateur racing for the better and make the temperature come down a little bit for the families, raise the quality, and keep people in it longer because we're on the same page. So it's great. We're not the only ones that are talking this way. In fact, there's a lot of people talking this way, and it's gonna play a role. The sport's gonna get better over the next 5 years if we all stick to this and be on that same page together. That this is gonna be it's a long game. It's not a short game.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that I'm Phil, we've talked with you about, like on our podcast about with your dad, is your dad being so hard on you and kind of the mental game that you play now as a 36-year-old racer, like trying to show up and do the Loretta stuff. And like you've had to accept that like some days like you might not be the fastest guy. And like we're actually riding today. And one of the things we were just talking about is like sometimes it has to be okay that like you're not going to go out there and win. And you're 36 now dealing with this from a dad that was very hard on you when you were young. So working through the mental things, like you said, addressing it at a very young age, would definitely keep more riders in the sport longer. The only reason Phil still rides is because I race. He was trying to quit when we first started dating because he was just over it. He was so over the stress of it. His dad was going with him all the time, and they have a better relationship now. Again, because we do this together now, but It's taken some time to get there, and it's taken a lot of discussion about expectations for yourself on the track and learning to enjoy the sport. I'm a big advocate for no matter what's going on, you have to love riding your dirt bike still. You still have to enjoy it. If you're making a living doing it, don't forget that, man, you're out there riding your dirt bike. Like, have fun with it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So I'll give you a little insight on a video that I have coming out on my socials this weekend from a Zoom meeting that I just had with a family, and it was all about effort. And the dad was complaining about the effort was inconsistent, and he's like, some days he tries and some days he doesn't try. And I dealt with this when I was a kid because I was very good when I was a mini bike rider. So when things were going well, it looked like my effort was there, and when things were going bad, it visually looked like my effort wasn't there, but it never was actually effort. It was distractions. It was fear. It was lack of confidence. So when the gate would go down, sometimes I would just freeze up and I wouldn't ride the same. And then I'd be accused of like, you not trying. And it was like, it's not trying. I don't even know what's happening, but sometimes you just lock up and freeze up because of all those other variables. And I think the most important thing is for a dad and a son to have an open and honest relationship with each other, to where if you have a bad moto, you need to go up to him and be like, hey, that was obviously below standard of what I've seen out of you. Tell me what's going on. What's on your mind? What was on your mind before the gate dropped? Are you nervous about something? Were you afraid? Is there an obstacle out there? Is it? And I think if you can have that relationship, then you can get more out of each other too. And I'm having to deal with that with my son right now. And some days he's just a little bit off, and I could tell he's frustrated. And instead of being like, get it together, or just, what are you doing? Just try harder. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And our relationship is strong enough now to where he could say, I don't know. I feel like I'm just not in sync, blah, 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 blah. And I'll go, oh, okay, well, since we're out of sync today, why don't we take the pressure off of speed? Why don't we take the pressure off of success? Let's put the pressure on instead on something that you're struggling with on the motorcycle, like front brake or whatever. And I think that if you have that relationship and communication, and you can take the pressure off a little bit and lower the temperature, you can end up making bad days good days, because you're playing the long game here. Again, today is not the day. This is not the day that's going to decide your life, but this day is obviously going a bad direction. Why don't we take the pressure off and turn the ship this way and focus on something to get it back on track? And it's really hard to do that, though, when the communication ain't there. So that's one of the things that I do preach with Supercross U, is communication with the father and the son, and making sure that dad understands that it's not always an effort issue. It's not that he's not trying. Something's got him bothered. Something's got him confused, and you need to get to the bottom of it. And the only way to do that is to have some trust in each other. And that's all based on the approach. So, these are the kinds of lessons it sounds like we had some similar experiences in this growing up, because, there was an expectation on me that I was going to be something special, because I had a tendency to be special at times. And the days when I wasn't, things were going on, like real things were bothering me. And instead of putting the pressure on winning that day, if the pressure would have turned on to something else, I probably would have got better, even though I lost that day, but it would have been better long term. So it's all mental. At the end of the day, the sport is the most mental sport in the world, but it comes down to communication and the way you communicate back and forth, and the way you dissect problems, and don't just assume that a problem is a problem because of effort or this or that. You got to dig deep and find out what's going on. And the only way to do that is to have a good relationship and good communication, even on the bad days, especially on the bad days, really.
Yeah,
I,
that's I couldn't agree more with that.
I think one skill that most people, 99% of people could use to improve is listening, actually listening.
Yes.
So yeah, I agree with all of that. But I'm really glad to hear that, like you said, there's discussion elsewhere on trying to improve the industry. Like, it'll be a different, amateur to pro transition in
Yep.
5 years. We're really excited to be a part of that too. And just helping, even like you said, we don't only focus on amateur national racers. We have like a local scene too, that we help people who are just vet riders on the weekends, like trying to feel a little better on their dirt bike.
Just being able to keep riding.
Yeah, that's a big one too. Like, I've worked with people who are 60 years old, because he's like, hey, I'm getting out of shape and it's hard to swing my leg over the bike anymore. Can you help me? I'm like, yes, I can. So just really, helping people who love riding and improving the sport. Like you said, I love working with younger people, older people, just kind of progressing the sport forward in terms of, keeping people involved, growing the sport that's never a bad thing for it. So
Knowledge is power.
yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. I actually have a student who is in the 50 plus class. They're not going to Supercross, but they wanted guidance anyway, because they care about their racing. It's very important to them. It's a It's not even a hobby. It's like a super hobby. They're very into it. They want to get better. And the question was, hey, I want your advice. I want your help because I want to get faster. And I said, okay, so what do you think? How are you going to get faster? He's like, I just don't know how to get faster. I want to get faster. And I said, well, if you want to get faster, you have to get better because speed comes from skill, not from trying harder. If you want to get 1 second faster, it's not from turning the wrist harder. You can't turn it any harder. It's from being better with your front brake, better with your clutch, better with your shifting, better with your body control, better with your line selection. So it's funny because all of our lessons have been built on skill building, and the speed's getting like way faster. He's getting a lot faster, and it's 100% based on picking apart what you need to do to get faster. And for a lot of people, they think if I want to get 1 second lower on the stopwatch, means you just got to try harder. You got to hit that a little harder. And it's like, no, every second of speed comes from a second of skill. And so you bring up, the vet class, and I have a 50+ guy who's not going to Supercross anytime soon. I don't think that's in the cards, but he is getting faster, and it's because we are working on what is needed for him, and it's skill building. So again, that's part of my program, is really being a chameleon to everybody's needs and making sure that everyone is getting what they need. And some of them, it is more speed based. It's less skill. They're very good fundamentally, but they need to learn how to push better. They need to learn how to take chances. And I'm good at that too. So it's really, I think the sport is so cool because everyone is so different, and you can just cater everyone's education around what they need because not everyone's the same. And that's what probably keeps it the most fun for me. If I was saying the same thing over and over again to the same, I mean, if it was 20 people a day, same lesson, I don't even know if I'd like this. I mean, honestly, I'd put out a video and say, "Oh, why don't you all just watch this one?" But I love the fact that every single session is something so randomly different, and that's honestly what keeps me kind of on my toes. It makes me even want to get smarter at the sport because I don't know it all. I'm still learning. I learn a lot from these kids and from these families because I'm like, wow, that's new. So that I think my fulfillment's coming from that too, is that it's just so crazy range and everybody's so different.
That's exactly where we're at too. It keeps us busy on our toes. We meet people where they are at. That's what we say. So,
Yep.
working workouts around schedules and everyone's different. Oh my gosh, the post-injury list. I have to work around all of those. I'm a corrective exercise specialist as well. That's always such a challenge. Like, oh, I can't hardly move my ankle. What can we do? I'm like, we'll figure it out. But yeah, it's a fun challenge. So I wanted to ask too, so if people are interested in reaching out to you, how do they find out your information, reach out to you? What do they do?
So you go to supercrossu.com and you can start there and just browse the site and kind of take a look at what we're doing. Again, there's curriculum and masterclass. That's what we call masterclass, is the individualized programs that we have. And then curriculum is the just the classroom setting style. So you could start there. There's a contact form there. Some people do email me there if they have a specific question about the program, and I answer all those too. So, but yeah, just go to supercrossu.com. I'll just throw it out there, but I'm pretty good on Instagram too. If you DM me, I'm pretty good at it. So you can either DM our Supercross U Instagram page or even my personal one.
I
And
have
I
to
try to
say
get
that's
back.
how I got a hold of you. You do respond, so thank you.
I do. And I feel very grateful in the position I'm in, where I can help. And I think the way to help the best is to be communicative. And so I do my very best. It does get overwhelming sometimes, depending on what's going on with me at the moment. But at the same time, I love the sport, and I'm really doing this out of pure passion and out of my own experiences and trying to right some wrongs in my own life. And I think being available to everybody has been a huge part of that for me. So, but yeah, supercrossu.com is where you can start, and then we can go from there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think I can speak for both of us in saying that we love what you're doing, definitely supportive of it. Super happy to have you on our podcast. Been a great conversation, but do you have anything else, any other things that you wanted to add in here before we close this up?
No, just you two, just stay passionate. It makes a difference. Family by family. So I enjoy talking to people like-minded, and I'm very happy to speak with you. We could do it again sometime. No problem. We could, I mean, this is very broad. We could be more detailed next time. So just reach out, and we can go from there. But to all your listeners, thanks for tuning in, and for you too, just thanks for your passion and being at the races and being at the tracks and trying to help families get better and get through this thing. I appreciate that. And again, I think if we all move in this thing together in the same direction, I think we can make an impact here. And you're doing your part too. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it takes an army.
Yeah, it definitely does. And thank you, and all your info and your knowledge and putting it out there.
Your contribution to the sport too, just as a whole, you've been around.
Yeah.
I love it. It's beat me up a little bit, but for some reason I just can't get enough and fill my days with it. Now I got a 14-year-old who's racing too, so it's getting out of control over here. I'm really, really getting spread out. But I love it. I love every minute of it. Even the tough days have been very rewarding for me. So thank you.
Yeah. I always say moto is like a bad drug. It's we're just adrenaline junkies. It's hard to get away from.
It
And it's
is.
like you
Once
get
you're
away
in,
from it.
you can't get out.
Yeah. And
That's
it's like
us.
when you
You're a
do,
testament to that too. Again, you're trying to
yeah.
get out. Here you are. So
Oh, I know. And I can say I have way more fun with riding nowadays, and it has created longevity in my riding and stuff, and trying to focus more on things that I can improve instead of things that are just I can't go faster. Why? So, but yeah, it's it's been awesome, trying to help out and give back. So, and try to, like you said, guide people in the right direction instead of the wrong one.
yep.
All right, guys. Well, you heard it here. Danial Blair, Supercross University. Check it out if you're interested. If you have any questions, like he literally responded to me very quickly. So please reach out to him, ask him about his program. It would be a great help to anyone looking to. Most of, I think, our listeners are more on the lines of looking to go to Loretta's and stuff. So please reach out to him, reach out to us if you need anything. But thanks for listening. That was episode 17. So stay tuned and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys.